Hi folks. Well, who would have thought 3 months ago the world would look the way it looks today? It's quite amazing really when you think about it, how they've managed to do this. I mean, 3 months ago we were in a position where we had record low unemployment. All Western economies, well, most of them, were doing pretty well. Everything was pretty kosher, everyone was happy, everyone was getting along with their lives. And now, 3 months later, we've got record unemployment, record discontent, and virtually everybody stuck at home under house arrest. It's pretty amazing how they've done that, isn't it? It's been remarkable, really, to see the change in the world. And it's just continuing. It's just not letting up at all. So we'll discuss a few things today. I'll talk about some of the things that need to be addressed. And as usual, I'll cover some of the negative stuff that's going on, but I also want to try to look at some of the positive aspects to what we're seeing here, because I think there is actually some pretty positive aspects to some of this, folks. I really do. What they're doing, I mean, they've announced here in Australia they'd like to bring in a surveillance app, of course, a contact app, just to make sure that you know if you came into contact with anyone who has the terrible COVID-19. Of course, that's their reason for wanting you to have this tracking and contact tracing app on your phone. But actually they're saying that whether you want it or not, they're going to put it in the new models anyway. So you think about that, folks. If they're going to put it in the new models, then is this really all about COVID-19? If COVID-19 is just this pandemic that's going to go away, then why are they going to be putting it into the new models?
Imagine if your phone could tell you that you've been exposed to someone with COVID-19. Two tech giants are working on that right now.
Today, Google and Apple announced that they have a tracking tool that would allow health professionals to contact you if you've been near someone who has tested positive. WCCO's Aaron Hassanzadeh explains the risks and potential benefits before this goes public.
Google and Apple plan to harness the power of our phones by launching a tracing tool to alert people who have come in contact with COVID-19 patients.
They'll use Bluetooth to detect when phones are in close proximity to each other.
Cybersecurity expert Ryan Cloutier says the plan is for users to be anonymous, and those who are alerted by medical professionals won't know who infected them or where. When available, users will have to opt in to participate. Apple and Android users will need to download an app and leave their Bluetooth on.
Talk about the role that this could play in accelerating our return to normal life.
So one of the things that we've consistently heard from the doctors is that contact tracing is a critical part of how we return to normality.
But there are challenges ahead with privacy, widespread access to smartphones, and security. The ACLU says it wants to ensure any contact tracing app remains voluntary and decentralized and is used only for public health purposes and only for the duration of this pandemic.
Bluetooth is relatively easy to compromise.
Cloutier says if your Bluetooth is on, hackers nearby can code their way into your contacts, photos, and other data. But despite those concerns,
would you participate in something like this?
I too am eager to get back to work, so I would use it, but I would use it with a degree of caution.
Aaron Hassanzadeh, WCCO4 News.
So here's the timeline. The companies plan to launch this next month. You will need to download an app. But in the coming months, Apple and Google plan to build the tech directly into their phones to eliminate the need for an app.
You think about what they just said, folks. Like she said, they're going to be putting it into the new models. I mean, what's that all about? Really, I mean, what's that all about? If COVID was just this temporary thing, why put a tracing app in the new models? This is why I don't have a cell phone, folks. This is why I don't use cell phones, because cell phones are a really big part of this surveillance system. You know, they couldn't do this. They couldn't track all your contacts and put all this social crediting and all this stuff in place if you didn't use your cell phones all the time. That's the problem. Actually, I had to use a cell phone the other day just to get onto that for a moment. I had to use one because when I got this camera, I had to register it on a cell phone. So I had to borrow someone's cell phone and sign into my Google account my Gmail account in order to register this pocket camera that I've got, this Osmo Pocket. For people who are wondering what the camera is that I'm using, it's an Osmo Pocket with an extension handle. A lot of people have asked me that. But anyway, when I was in there, I noticed that on my YouTube account there was actually an inbox on my YouTube account, and there's people can email you via your YouTube account, and it goes to the Gmail account that's attached to that YouTube channel. And I noticed that I've got about 1,500 emails in my crowhouse, the crowhouse at gmail.com in that mailbox. And folks, I never used that mailbox. I didn't even know you could send messages to people or emails to people via YouTube, and I don't use Gmail. I've got a Gmail account because a few years ago when Google and YouTube merged, I was forced to open a Gmail account in order to keep my YouTube channel. And that's kind of precisely why I don't use it, because I just don't do authority very well. And the fact that I was being forced to open this Gmail account made me think, well, I guess they really want me to have a Gmail account and they really want me to use it, so I guess I shouldn't use it. So I don't use it. So if anybody has emailed me through my Crowhouse Gmail account, I apologise for not answering your email, but I didn't even know that people would know that account existed, and I didn't expect people would be emailing me via that account. But I don't use Gmail, folks. If you want to email me, you can do it through the contact form on my website. But that's about the only way that I get emails from people, is through the contact form on my website. Incidentally, for anybody who has been doing that, I've found that there's a fault with the applet. So if you send me an email via the website and you copy paste, I think if you copy paste a URL into that applet, then I just get a blank message. So it's best to not copy paste URLs in there. If you want to send me a URL, just write me in and let me know you want to send me a URL, and I'll respond to you, and then you can send the URL to that address. So anyway, that's just a little bit of housekeeping that I thought would be good to do, because yeah, I was quite surprised when I found over 1,500 messages in my Gmail email account. Didn't expect that to be there, folks. That's the way it goes, I suppose. A couple of horses up here. A bit windy as well, possibly. So possibly we'll get out of the wind. But yeah, folks, it's just continuing. The surveillance apps, this is coming in all around the world, these surveillance apps. And they'll break the lockdown soon. I mean, they'll let people out soon. They'll say it's safe to go outside. But like I also have mentioned, I doubt very much whether they will ease the social distancing guidelines. And social distancing is the really big thing they want to keep in, folks. Surveillance cameras work much better when people are standing 1.5 to 2 metres apart. And incidentally, if you live in Australia and you're having trouble using cash in Australia, a lot of people aren't accepting cash at the moment because of the terrible COVID. If that happens, there's a website you can go to, and I'll put an image up here on the screen. I actually printed this out and I've been showing it to people, and a friend of mine printed up on a PDF form which doesn't reference the Australian government and should work in most countries. I'll put a link to that below so you can download it. And you need to show this to people. He actually had great success the other day. He went into a shop and he bought 50 kilos worth of meat. For all you vegans out there, don't worry about it. It's the point of the exercise. He bought 50 kilos worth of meat. He got his wife to take it all out to the car. Then he went to pay for it, and the shop said that they wouldn't they wouldn't accept cash. And he showed him that note from the WHO and the reference to the Australian government website, and he said, I can sue you because it's... What he said was, am I to understand that you are refusing to accept legal tender as payment of debt? And the shop said, yeah, we won't accept cash. And he showed him the note, and he said, I can sue you because it's against the law to refuse to accept legal tender as payment of debt. And they ran and got the manager, and the manager came out and said, oh yes, we accept cash. And that's what you can do, folks. So if you live in Australia, don't take this. If they're telling you can't use cash, show them that note that I've got, that I just put on the website on the screen before, and you can download that PDF. If you're not in Australia, you can download that PDF below, and you can show it to people and say, well, this is what the WHO says about COVID and cash, okay? It doesn't transfer the disease, but of course, we know it doesn't because there is no COVID-19, folks. This whole thing is a scam, and it has been since day one. I think a lot of people are getting onto that as well. A lot of people are. And a lot of people are trying to point it out, but they're getting in trouble for it, folks. I mean, this is sort of going worldwide. I mean, what we've seen in the United States is pretty freaky. What's happened with F.E.M.A. And, you know, this happened on March 13th, I think. I mean, a lot of people have been kind of freaking out about it. I've seen a lot of people posting information about F.E.M.A. and about what's happened, that Trump's actually handed the power of the United States over to F.E.M.A., and he has, essentially. But this happened back on March 13, so it's interesting that people are putting out videos about it now. You know, and Trump, you know, I almost have to feel a little sorry for the guy at the moment. You know, I mean, he's stupid. He might be a good businessman, but he's not a good politician. He doesn't really understand how things work at a deeper level. You know, I remember a couple of months ago he said, you know, you wouldn't believe the amount of power that I've got now. You know, I can just do just about anything I want. You know, kind of almost dictatorial status. And then when he enacted the Emergency Act, when he declared a national emergency, I almost think that he thought that that would give him almost dictatorial powers, and he would be able to control what the states did, control what the governors do, and all this sort of stuff. I don't think he realised that what he was actually doing was handing control of the country over to F.E.M.A. because he's not really in charge at the moment, and he can't be because of the amount of executive orders that have been enacted. There's actually a woman put out a very good video about that. I'll play you a couple of minutes of it now, and I'll leave a link below.
We're going to connect the dots for anybody who has ears to hear. Some people are going to want to dispute this, but we're not going to argue with anyone. This is what's going on. There is no Q, there is no anonymous that has any information about this government or anything else that's going on. They have been leading you down a path of lies, all to hide the truth. And here's what's really going on. F.E.M.A. has more power than the President of the United States or the Congress. It has the power to suspend laws, move entire populations, arrest and detain citizens without a warrant, and hold them without trial. It can seize property, food supplies, transportation systems, and can suspend the Constitution. When a state of emergency is declared, Executive Order 11921 allows the Federal Emergency Preparedness Agency to develop plans to establish control over the mechanisms of production and distribution of energy sources, wages, salaries, credit, and the flow of money in the U.S. financial institution in any undefined national emergency. It also provides that when a state of emergency is declared by the President, Congress cannot review this action for 6 months. Now, with the understanding that after Trump signed the National Emergency Declaration, F.E.M.A. took over. Now, this is March 13th, 2020. Listen to what he's going to say now. This is right after he signed the National Emergency into effect.
It is only the beginning of what we're really doing, and now we're in a different phase.
This is only the beginning of what we're really doing, because what they're really doing is putting everything in place to start the New World Order.
Now we're in a different phase.
The different phase that he's speaking of is that he is no longer president, and he has given full power over to F.E.M.A. when he signed the National Emergency Declaration.
We had some very old and obsolete rules.
Those old and obsolete rules are also known as the Constitution of the United States.
That we had to live with. It worked under certain circumstances, but not under mass circumstances. Under mass circumstances is being under F.E.M.A. rule. They were there for a long time. They were in place for a long time, and we're breaking them down now.
They're definitely breaking them down because the Constitution is suspended.
And they're very usable for certain instances, but not for this.
Because they can't go forward with their plan with the Constitution, our constitutional rights, still intact.
To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency.
So he is officially telling us in a coded message that we are now under the rule of F.E.M.A., no longer having a president. Fast forward to March 19th, 2020, in the F.E.M.A. National Response Coordination Center.
Well, Mr. President, Vice President, thank you for being here. Really appreciate your visit to F.E.M.A. I think your visit really, as you indicated last week, by signing the national emergency, has really empowered FEMA,
And he just made the declaration that FEMA is empowered, has really empowered FEMA. Fast forward to April 10th, 2020, in plain words, it's been my great honor to have been their president. Past tense.
The American people have been so disciplined. It's been my honor to be their president. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'll say it always. It's been my great honor to have been their president, and it's been my great honor to have been their president and have been their president. I have a big decision coming up, and I only hope to God that it's the right decision. But it'll be based on the input from a lot of very talented people, very smart people, and people that love our country. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
He actually will not be making any more decisions. This group of people that he says will be helping him make decisions are the ones that are making decisions now, because it is FEMA that is making the decisions. And as you can hear in this live briefing, Trump obviously does not know what's going on, because he said, you should have let us know, when Mike Pompeo said, we're in a live exercise.
Pompeo says this is a live exercise. And what you'll hear in the background is Donald Trump say, you should have let us know.
This is not about retribution. This matters going forward. We're in a live exercise here to get this right. We need to make sure that we're in a live exercise here to get this right. We're in a live exercise here to get this right. We're in a live exercise here to get this right.
Does he sound like a man that's in control of anything anymore? He just looks like he has just lost his best friend in all of these videos that we're seeing now ever since he signed the National Emergency Declaration. I'm sure most of us thought that FEMA was created to help people in disasters. But here's the truth about FEMA. FEMA was created in a series of executive orders. A presidential executive order, whether constitutional or not, becomes law simply by its publication in the Federal Registry. Congress is bypassed. Executive Order 12148 created the Federal Emergency Management Agency, that is to interface with the Department of Defense for civil defense planning and funding. An emergency czar was appointed. Executive Order 12656 appointed the National Security Council as the principal body that should consider emergency powers. This allows the government to increase domestic intelligence and surveillance of U.S. citizens, and would restrict the freedom of movement within the United States and grant the government the right to isolate large groups of civilians. That's where we're at right now, people. We are all being told what to do, where we can and can't go. The National Guard could be federalized to seal all borders and take control of U.S. airspace and all ports of entry. Executive Order 10990 allows the government to take over all modes of transportation and control of highways and seaports. Executive Order 10995 allows the government to seize and control the communications media. Executive Order 10997 allows the government to take over all electrical power, gas, petroleum, fuels, and minerals. Executive Order 10998 allows the government to take over all food resources and farms. Executive Order 11000 allows the government to mobilize civilians into work brigades under government supervision. Executive Order 11001 allows the government to take over all health, education, and welfare functions. Executive Order 11002 designates the Postmaster General to operate a national registration of all persons. That's where your census comes in. Executive Order 11003 allows the government to take over all airports and aircraft, including commercial aircraft. Executive Order 11004 allows the Housing and Finance Authority to relocate communities, build new housing with public funds, designate areas to be abandoned, and establish new locations for populations.
Hi folks, I just wanted to interject a little afterthought into the video here, something that I wanted to say while I was out in the park, but I forgot to. But everything that the woman just outlined there for you, everything that everybody's so freaked out about with all these executive orders, you know, the only reason that they work is because people think that that type of legal system is real. You know, people believe that what other people write on paper means it's law and they must do it. But really, there's only one law, folks, and that's God's law, and that's do no harm. So, you know, when you look at the F.E.M.A legislation, all these executive orders, all they do is actually cause harm. They're doing it under the guise of protecting you from an emergency, but there is no emergency. COVID-19 is not an emergency. It's a fiction. So it's pretty important to look at this, folks, and look how people have been set up into going along with this. Because none of that stuff that they wrote down is actually real unless you believe it to be real. But anyway, back to the walk and talk. So yeah, just listening to some of the stuff that she outlined there, I mean, it's a pretty serious situation. So, you know, Trump isn't your friend. Q is not your friend. I've been trying to tell people that this whole Q thing, there's been a scam right from the beginning. Managed to get people sitting there just waiting for something to happen, believing Trump's in there to bat for them. You know, Trump's an actor, folks. Trump's an actor. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just doing what he's told. You know, and this is the way it's going. It's going to turn into martial law in the United States, and it's going to get very violent if people aren't sort of careful about the actions that they undertake through this crisis. I mean, sure, we should be breaking the blockade and we should be ending the lockdown, but we need to be doing it in the right way. You know, not violent protests and violent marches in the street and all this sort of stuff. This just plays into the hands of F.E.M.A. You know, and a lot of people that do that will end up in the F.E.M.A camps. I mean, that's what they're doing it for. And it's not just the United States where this is happening as well. There was a lawyer in Germany by the name of Detained, I think. And she complained to the German government that this is actually a breach of human rights. And she wanted to question the legality of the lockdown. And they threw her in the asylum. They threw her in the nut house. Chucked her in the grin bin because she wanted to question the official line. They said she was gaga. She was confused. She was not really all together, and that she needed to go in for psychiatric evaluation. And the same thing happened to a doctor in Switzerland, a guy by the name of Thomas Binder, I think that's his name. And he's the same. He was a medical doctor, and he complained about, you know, questioned the validity of the claims of COVID-19, and a SWAT team actually raided his doctor's surgery and beat him, and they took him off to the asylum, off to the psychiatric ward for psychiatric evaluation. So, you know, they're doing this sort of thing to set examples, folks. They want to make examples of people so other people don't follow suit. You know, they want to stop other doctors speaking out. They want to stop other lawyers, you know, examining the human rights perspective of this and the legality of everything that's going on, because, you know, it's just not legal, folks. Nothing that they're doing is legal. But then none of it ever is it, you know? And the UK is saying that they're going to keep going for like possibly 18 months, which is completely ridiculous. Our government's saying that, of course, it's going to take a vaccine to heal things. Luckily, Bill Gates has been getting an awful lot of flack, and that's good to see. There is talk that the Surgeon General has thrown him out, that they're just going to disband the whole Gates model, and I really hope that they do. In fact, I really hope the man faces charges, because he needs to face charges, folks. In fact, all of our governments need to face charges over this. And Trump, but I think he's an idiot more than anything. I really do. Like I said, I feel a little bit sorry for him. In the speech where he was handing over control to F.E.M.A, he looked beaten. He really looked like he was beaten. You know, it's almost like he believed, you know, the world did operate as a business model, and he could get in there and he could actually make a difference. You know, perhaps he didn't realise that, yeah, it's a business model, but there's also this sort of satanic pedophile undertone going on. There's all this satanic ritual abuse and all this other stuff going on behind the scenes that he perhaps didn't take into account too much, and I suggest he should have. You know, that would appear to be one of his problems. But I don't know, I almost felt sorry for him looking at him in that speech. I mean, you know, I kind of did. I mean, I can't help it, but I mean, I don't trust him, but I did almost feel sorry for him just because of the way he looked, you know. There's also talk, you've probably seen other people saying that you're going to be, the problem with COVID now is that it's actually going to the home and it's being transferred by people within the home. People are picking it up at work and they're taking it home, and so now, because people are in close proximity in the home, it's being transferred there, and there might be a need to remove people from their homes. So you can see where this is going, folks. Even though you have no symptoms, they can come and remove you from your home simply because you tested positive for COVID-19. But there's also talk, when you look at it, and I'm not a doctor, so I don't know what this is particularly, but I read an article that said the PCR test primer that they use for testing people can be found in all DNA. So, as was mentioned by David Icke on one of his talks, a lot of this, I think, depends on the amount of amplification they use in the test. So, they've got this virus in place, and they've got this whole scenario in place. Well, they can virtually take anybody they want from their home because, they suspect that they may be, contaminated with COVID-19, and yet they have a test which can virtually identify this so-called virus in virtually anybody, depending on how they run the test. This is pretty insidious, folks. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's pretty insidious that they can do this sort of a thing. I think it's important that people pay attention to all this. I really do. Of course, one of the main culprits through this, of course, is the media, the mainstream media is really, you could blame the governments, but the politicians are really just puppets. It's the banking cartels that operate behind the politicians, but even beyond that, you look at the real interface, it's the media. The media is the most powerful organisation on earth, and the actions of these people are reprehensible. Every one of these people should be strung up for the lies that they've spread, their failure to bring the real story to the people. To just allow humanity to go through all this and to, kowtow to the bankers the way they do. But of course, it's because I've got dirt on all of them, isn't it? That story I did the other day, I had, it was yesterday, I had Rachel Vaughan. I interviewed Rachel Vaughan about the Beaumont children, and she was saying that they actually filmed child porn in Channel 9 studios in Adelaide. And it's done quite often. I'm sure it happens in other television studios as well. So when you think of the dirt that they've got on these people, folks, that's why we don't get the truth from any of them. It's pretty shocking, but that's the way it goes, folks. The world's run by pedophiles and criminals. It really is. And another report I saw, was a very interesting report. It was an economic report. And apparently this person who wrote this report, I can't think of their name at the moment, but it was a letter that was sent to Donald Trump. And I recommended that you need to get the workforce, open the country and get the workforce back up and running by the 1st of May. And if you do not, then the entire world will enter into an economic collapse, which will begin and probably take about 13 years before it comes to its complete bottom and rock bottom. But it won't recover. And the only way to get it back going is to get people back to their jobs now, put everything back to the way it was, or it's just going to be an inevitable thing. And the only way you're going to get out of it is to create an entire new economic model. That's what he said. And that's pretty interesting, folks. It's pretty interesting. When you look at stuff like that, you can see that, well, that's the plan. That's the plan. They want to crash the system completely. They just want to hang everybody out to dry. And they're just going to have fun while they're doing it. They like this sort of stuff, folks, Ritual, satanic ritual abuse. Think of the amount of suffering that is going to happen through all this, and, they're going to get off on all of that because that's what they do. Pretty shocking, folks. Pretty shocking. I came to this park once before to do a talk with you. It's a nice park. Years ago, when I was doing so much work, trying to alert people to what was going on in Palestine, I used to say that, Palestine is the greatest moral dilemma in the world today because it is essentially child abuse. It's child abuse that's been carried out by a rogue state but it happens because it's supported by our governments. And if we choose to heal Palestine, we can change our own moral compass and we can heal the world, because that will empower us into standing up for what is right. You know, the only way we could ever heal the issue in Palestine is to stop our governments funding that problem. And if we had done that, we could have healed that, and we would have felt so empowered to be able to heal other things. And I also used to say that if we do not heal Palestine, then the way of Palestine will be the way of the world. I said that so many times because I said Palestine is the greatest moral dilemma in the world today, and what we see in Palestine is a system of warehousing and surplusing human beings. And if we don't heal the situation there, then it's going to come to all of our countries as well. And that's exactly what we're seeing now, ladies and gentlemen. You know, as shocking as it is to admit it, that's what we're seeing now. It's pretty freaky, you know, it's pretty freaky. But, you know, in many ways, there's a positive to it as well, because they have virtually red-pilled the entire world with all this. I mean, so many people get it now. I was in there buying some food today. I was buying myself a salad roll. And I started talking to the lady there, and I said, well, what do you think of the world today? She said, yeah, pretty scary. I said, well, the virus isn't what you need to be scared of. What you need to be concerned about is the actions the government is taking to allegedly protect you from this alleged virus. And she said, She said, yeah, I'm not asleep. I don't believe everything the media tells me. And I said, well, you shouldn't believe anything they're telling you. I gave her a note, my little note that I give to people. And I told her to look into things and to not be scared. But she wasn't. She wasn't wearing a face mask. She was very friendly. But a lot of people are freaking out. But yeah, a lot of good stuff's coming of it, folks. I was speaking to a friend of mine in Seattle today, young lady. She's a musician. She said, well, wow, you know, since all this started, the government's given her $1,200 and she's able to sit at home and get all of her music together. She's managed to record a single she wants to release. She's got it mastered. She's built up her website. She's got everything ready to go. And she couldn't have done that if she was still working. Now, a lot of people, I think, are seeing how stupid their jobs were. I mean, what were you doing all the time at these places? Just, you know, doing all the stuff that you thought was important, and it's not really important at all. So, you know, there's a lot of people getting in touch with themselves, getting in touch with their artistic side, a lot of people reconnecting with their families. A lot of people are realising how futile and stupid it was to be getting up and doing what you're told and just going and doing all this stuff every day. I mean, what for? You know? And even if they were to reset the system now and to put everybody back to work and say all the jobs have just come online, I think it would be quite difficult for people to just go back to that after what they've just been through. I mean, you know, a lot of people have taken some pretty casual time here. They've had a pretty relaxed time of it. Some of them have been a bit stressed out. But a lot of people have got in touch with themselves. A lot of people have got in touch with their artistic side. A lot of people have reconnected with things they always wanted to do. You know, and that's a good thing, folks. I can't see anything wrong with that. You know, so, you know, we can look at the way they want to take it, which is to basically starve us all out. That's a big thing. And, you know, we've got to, with all of our, you know, looking at this in a positive light. Sure, there's a lot of positive stuff about it, but we can't let hubris kick in. You know, the way Bill Gates did when he posted that Marina Abramovic video and got all the flack that he got. The other day when I looked at it, there was 67,000 comments on his Instagram post calling for his arrest. The last time I looked, there was 132,000. And that's with the amount that he deletes. So, you know, he's really getting hammered through all this. But, you know, we can't let our hubris kick in, because what it's really all about is famine. That's what they want to do. It's always been a favourite method of these Bolsheviks to starve people out. You know, and that's what they're setting us up for. A lot of meatworks have closed at the moment as well. And, you know, whether you're a meat eater or not, it's irrelevant. Whether you're a vegan or not, I mean, it's irrelevant. A lot of people do eat meat, and they've closed down a lot of meatworks. And the reason they're doing that, again, is to just stop the food supply. You know, a lot of the people that work in the meatworks have been told that they have to self-isolate, so they're not allowed to be there, and they're not allowed to operate the cattle, and oh dear, they may be transferring this terrible coronavirus onto the meat, and so they have to self-isolate, and they can't do, you know, their work. They can't pack the meat, they can't ship the meat. A lot of the vegetable farmers are going out of business because a lot of their clientele was actually restaurants and stuff. And so, these people aren't buying, and so the shipments aren't flowing, and so they've had to close down pretty well altogether, and they can't ship their stuff to market anyway. So this is a big part of it. So a big thing we should be doing is growing food, establishing ties with people and getting prepared for what's coming. But, we have a real opportunity to step away from the system with all this, folks. Throw away your smartphone. Just don't comply with the government anymore. Stop paying your taxes. Stop feeding these people. Stop feeding these parasites, folks. Look what they've done to the world. And hopefully through this, a lot of people are realizing just how contrived this whole situation has been. I mean, gun sales are through the roof in the United States at the moment, but there's no shootings. You notice that? No other crime. No one's dying of any other diseases. Nobody's dying of heart attacks. No one's dying of lung failure. No one's dying of the flu. Everyone's dying of COVID-19 because every client that comes into the hospital is assumed to have COVID-19. And if there's any exosomes found in their body, which there will be because they're stressed, then they put COVID-19 down as the cause of death, and that's how they're getting the numbers. But they're jacking all the numbers up. This whole thing has been a scam, folks. So it's an opportunity for us because so many people are getting it. So many doctors are speaking out. Even if they're going to make examples of people like poor Bete Barn and the other guy or the doctor from Switzerland, even if they're going to do this sort of stuff, others shouldn't comply with it. It doesn't mean everybody needs to back down. I'd like to see a peaceful protest. I'd like to see everybody break the blockade and just go outside. No marching, no banners, no slogans, no yelling, no screaming. Just stand there in silence as one big family. A silent protest. Everybody stand there, burn their cell phones, cut up their credit cards, go back to a normal life. If you really want the virus to go away, folks, if you want the whole COVID-19 pandemic to stop, the best way to do it is to turn off social media, turn off the television, turn off mainstream radio, just disconnect from the mainstream media and disconnect from government, and the whole thing goes away. And so hopefully there's an opportunity in that for people. Hopefully people can see where we're being led now, because we are being led, and it's been, a long-going plan, but I think they've moved too quickly. I think, like I said, they've red-pilled most of the world with this. So the question is whether we're going to let them get away with it, whether we're just going to comply and roll over on command, or whether we're going to stand up for ourselves and do what we came here to do, which is to discover who we really are. And this is a huge opportunity to do that, folks. So that's what I'd like to see. But anyway, folks, I'll leave it there for now. Thank you to all the people who send me so many kind messages. Again, if you're going to email me, folks, please do it through the website. Don't email me via my YouTube channel, because I don't actually use that Gmail account. I only opened it in order to keep my YouTube channel. I opened it that day, and I've actually never gone back and looked at it ever since, until I had to register this camera. So it kind of surprised me to find all those emails in there, because I thought, well, why would they be there? I've never told anybody that I actually have this account. So yeah, I didn't look who they were from or anything. There's like 1,500 of them, so I wasn't going to go through it. But you can go to my website, thecrowhouse.com. You can send me a message through there, and that's the best place to do it. But again, don't copy paste any URLs into that chat applet or that message applet until I figure out what's going on with it. I'll have to get someone to look at it for me. Unfortunately, the site was hacked a little while ago, like a few months ago, and the email ability was disabled completely. And someone kindly created that new email service for me, but there seems to be a problem with it, so I'll figure that out as soon as I'm able. But thanks for joining me today, folks. Always a pleasure to have your company. Please do share the interview that I did yesterday with Rachel Vaughan. I intend to have Rachel on the show again because her story is absolutely compelling, and I think it needs to be told. And I think every Australian needs to hear it. And please do go and sign the petition. We know petitions don't do anything. I mean, the government's not going to act on a petition. South Australian police are never going to act on a petition. But it supports Rachel, and it supports all the people who want that site looked at. And, the fact that there's, over 14,000 people, over 14,000 signatures on that petition now, this goes to show just how important this case is. So, You know, it isn't the fact that we believe the petition is going to work. I've never believed in petitions, but it's a great show of support for the victims and for the people involved who want that site exhumed. So please do keep signing that petition if you haven't done already, and please do share it with people. But that's all I really want to bring you today, folks. I'll bring you another talk pretty soon. Tomorrow or the next day we'll find out what's going on. I hope you did get something positive from this. Sure, it's a pretty desperate situation. It's a desperate situation in the United States because Trump has handed power over to F.E.M.A. He's not really in charge anymore, and that can't be revoked for 6 months before that's up for review. That's the way the executive orders go. Yeah, he may not have thought that he was doing that because, you know, maybe he just didn't look. He hasn't signed all the executive orders that have led to that. That's the thing. And they get excessive, you know, consecutive presidents to sign these orders, so that none of them really know what's going on. Each one kind of looks okay on its own, but when you put them all together and everything's in place, then all you got to do is flick the switch and suddenly F.E.M.A gets full control of the country. And I don't think Trump realized what he was actually doing when he declared a state of emergency. I think he thought he was going to give himself more power, but what he did was actually hand the country over. So when you consider that, and you consider that F.E.M.A is now in charge of the country, you know, what the people do from this point is extremely important. Because if the people riot, if the people go into revolution or any type of violence, then, as I said, you know, this control that F.E.M.A now has isn't up for review for 6 months. 6 months after the declaration, which was March 13, I believe. So, if the people riot in that 6 month time, when it comes up for review in 6 months, the powers that believe they be might just well say, well, obviously there's so much civil unrest that we can't undo the state of emergency. We can't give power back to the president because there's so much civil unrest. That's why any act of rebellion that we see needs to be a peaceful act of non-compliance. Like I said, I'd like to see everybody just standing in silence and saying no. You know, violent marches, violent protests, and you won't make them violent, they will. As soon as you march, I'll send in the riot squad to make sure there's a riot. That's why they're called the riot squad. They go to protect you from a riot. No, there wasn't a riot before they arrived. It was a peaceful protest before they arrived. They create the riots all the time. All violence at protests is created by the police, so that's a complete wrong approach. So, yeah, we're at a very crucial time, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, the way of Palestine will be the way of the world, and if America goes into full martial law, then the way of the United States will be the way of the world as well. So pay attention, folks. Support your neighbours, support the people around you. Realise just how stupid this whole system is, and realise that you can just step away from it. Anytime you want, you can just step away from this whole mess. You know, how real is this system at all? How real are any of these people, folks? How real is any of this shit they do to us? I prefer to just hang out with this tree. I'll talk to you next time, folks. In Lakesh.